I woke up on Christmas Eve to a silence so complete it felt staged, like someone had pressed pause on my life while I was still dreaming. The air in the house was wrong, too still, too intentional. And as I sat up in bed staring at the faint winter light pushing through the blinds, the first thought that hit me wasn't fear. It was recognition, a quiet, familiar ache. This time they really did it. My name is Mara Collins, 27 years old, bakery cashier, professional peacekeeper of my own family. I've spent most of my life smoothing the edges of other people's chaos. But that morning, the chaos was gone, replaced by absence, a hollow so sharp it could cut. Before I continue my story, tell me this. If the people you loved proved they could discard you without hesitation, would you confront them or finally choose yourself? I pulled on a sweater and walked into the hallway. No sound of coffee brewing, no footsteps, no arguing over who hid the remote again, just the echo of my own breathing. For a moment, I wondered if they'd gone out to pick up last-minute groceries or forgotten decorations. But the longer I stood there, the more the truth pressed in, cold and steady. Something wasn't right. Not just wrong, intentional. When I reached the living room, I froze. The tree was still lit, but the presents around it were gone. Not opened, gone. Clean spots on the carpet where they'd once been. No stockings, no gift bags, no clutter. No sign of Christmas at all, except the mocking glow of the lights. And then I saw it. The family tablet sitting on the coffee table, screen glowing with a flight notification. Collins family, boarding complete. Destination, Nassau, Bahamas. Flight departed, 6:15 a.m. My breath left me in one long, hollow exhale. They were gone. All of them. My parents, my sister, my brother, and I wasn't even an afterthought. In that moment, standing barefoot on our cold living room floor, the world didn't collapse. It clarified. Every memory, every slight, every quiet dismissal clicked into place like a lock turning. They hadn't forgotten me. They had removed me. And as the weight of that truth settled into my chest, something else rose quietly beneath it. Not anger, not yet, but a clean, focused awareness. A stillness that felt almost deliberate. I didn't know it then, but that silence was the beginning of everything. The unraveling, the truth, the plan, the justice, and the person I would become because of it. Here at Revenge Bible, we explore real psychological stories of betrayal and justice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never missed our next emotional reckoning. Before that Christmas Eve morning, my life was predictable. Not peaceful, not happy, just predictable in the way a hallway light flickers the same way every night. You get used to it. You stop questioning it. You convince yourself the flicker is normal, even comforting. I lived with my parents because it made financial sense, or at least that's what I told people. Rent prices were rising, and my bakery cashier job barely covered more than groceries and a modest savings routine. But the truth, the one I rarely admitted even to myself, was simpler. I stayed because leaving felt like declaring myself an outsider in my own bloodline. And I wasn't ready to be that. Not yet. My mother, Linda, was the kind of woman who maintained her authority through a mixture of guilt and charm. She loved compliments, hated questions, and controlled the emotional climate of the household with frightening ease. My father, Greg, was quieter. Not kinder, just quieter. He had a long record of agreeing with whatever your mother decides, which effectively made her the architect of everything, including the atmosphere we lived in. Then there was my older sister, Brianna. Sharp-tongued, successful in the way my parents admired, Loud accomplishments, curated photos, and the kind of confidence that tramples whatever doesn't match her pace. She worked in a tech company and talked about herself as if narrating an award show acceptance speech. My younger brother Evan floated between ambition and avoidance. Smart, capable, but utterly allergic to conflict. Whenever decisions were made, big ones, small ones, unfair ones, he vanished into silence. "Don't drag me into it," he would mutter, which in our family translated to compliance. And the middle of all that was me. Mara, the quiet one, the soft one, the "you understand, we had no choice" one. At least that's who they believed I was. My days usually began before sunrise. I'd slip out of the house quietly, drive to the bakery where the ovens were already warm, and tie my hair back with the same floral scrunchie I'd worn for years. There was something grounding about the early hours. The smell of yeast, the hum of mixers, the simple math of measuring ingredients. Dough didn't lie. It didn't manipulate. It didn't pretend to care and then fail you. Every morning on my 15-minute break, I'd pull out my small floral-covered gratitude journal. It wasn't something I advertised. It was private, a daily ritual to keep my inner world from collapsing. I'd write 3 things, one small, one personal, one hopeful. Warm cinnamon rolls today. Dad asked about my shift schedule without complaining. Maybe next year I'll travel somewhere. Hope can be dangerous when placed in the wrong hands. As the holidays approached, I noticed little changes in the house. Whispers behind half-closed doors, sudden silences when I walked into the room. At the time, I brushed them off. Families get tense around Christmas. Money gets tight. Expectations build. I didn't want to read too deeply into anything because doing so meant I had to face a possibility I wasn't ready for, that I might not belong as securely as I believed. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. The nights when my mother stayed up talking to Brianna in clipped, urgent tones, the way my father avoided meeting my eyes during dinner, Evan hovering in the hallway like he wanted to warn me, but didn't know how. And then the inheritance. My grandmother had passed away earlier that year. Quietly, gently. The kind of woman who sent handwritten birthday cards and wrapped gifts with real ribbons. I'd been close to her, closer than my siblings ever were. When the lawyer explained her estate, he'd said her savings were to be divided equally among her 3 grandchildren. A simple, fair plan. I assumed my family would honor it. That was my mistake. I didn't know the amount then, only that something was due to come. Something meaningful, something she wanted me to have. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, my mother kept saying things like, "Try not to worry about finances right now," and "we'll sort everything out after the holidays." Comments meant to pacify, not inform. I didn't press. I never did. Our house, despite being full, often felt tight, as if every room belonged more to them than to me. Decorations went up without my input, plans were made without my involvement, but I told myself it was fine. Family rhythms aren't always perfectly in sync. I told myself a lot of things to avoid confronting the truth simmering beneath the surface. On December 23rd, my family seemed too quiet, not tense. Quiet in the way people are when they're hiding something that benefits them. I remember finding my mother and sister whispering in the laundry room, their eyes widening for a split second when I walked in. My father shut his laptop the moment I approached him. Evan looked at me with a guilt so raw that it made my stomach twist. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Stay hopeful.
tomorrow will make sense. It didn't, because by sunrise the next morning, they were gone. And the house, once crowded with voices, was now a museum of absence. Back then, before everything broke open, I still believed family was a structure that couldn't be dissolved by greed. I believed people who claimed to love you would never choose personal gain over your presence. I believed loyalty meant something. It took one empty house to teach me otherwise.
Betrayal doesn't arrive like thunder. It arrives like a whisper you ignored too many times. Standing there in the living room, the flight notification glowing on the tablet, I felt the kind of stillness that comes not from shock, but from recognition. A part of me had known, deep down, that something was building, something deliberate, something desired without me in mind. But I didn't know the scale of it, not yet. I kept replaying the timestamp, 6:15 a.m. While I slept in the next room, my family had zipped suitcases, dragged them downstairs, loaded the car, and driven to the airport. Every footstep, every rustle of fabric, every whispered reminder to be quiet, they had done all of it knowing I was just a door away. And they didn't even close the door softly for my sake. I walked through the kitchen, touching surfaces as if the truth might be hiding under my fingertips. Empty sink, cold stove, no mugs drying, the chairs pushed in a little too neatly, the dishwasher's cycle light off, everything spotless in a way our house never was, unless something big was happening. I opened the fridge and saw it. Another clue. All the holiday food. The ham, the casserole ingredients, the sparkling drinks, they were gone. Every item we'd, quote, planned to cook together was missing, except for a lone container of leftover soup. They'd taken the celebration with them. I reached for my phone. No texts, no missed calls, nothing on the family group chat. When I called my mother, the line rang 3 times before going to voicemail. My father's phone went straight to not available. Brianna's had that smug, automated tone that said, "This person is unavailable and they probably want you to know it." Evan's didn't even ring. A lump formed in my throat, but it wasn't grief. It was clarity sharpening. I sat on the couch, tablet in hand, and tapped the notification. It opened a full itinerary. Hotel reservations, spa appointments, a holiday luxury package for 4. 4, not 5. 4. Scrolling deeper, I found the line that finally split something open inside me. Guests: Greg Collins, Linda Collins, Brianna Collins, Evan Collins. There was no +1, no extra ticket held aside, no message saying, "Join us when you can." Nothing. They didn't forget me. They excluded me. My hands trembled only once. After that, something inside me locked into place. Cold, focused, not numb, awake. I walked back to my room, opened my journal, and wrote the same sentence 3 times. They left without me. I needed to see it in ink. After a long minute, a thought rose, the one I'd been avoiding for months. The inheritance. It clicked so fast, the breath caught in my throat.
The secretive conversations, the financial anxieties they kept claiming to have, the sudden shift in mood after my grandmother's estate meeting, everything aligned. I walked to my mother's desk, not to pry, but because I knew her patterns. When she hid something, she hid it in plain sight. Her email account was still open, careless, hurried, rushed. There it was. An email thread with the estate attorney, marked unread only because she must have rushed out the door. The subject line? Inheritance distribution confirmation. My heart tightened, but I clicked anyway. The thread revealed everything. My grandmother's inheritance, $180,000, had been divided between the three of us on paper, but there, in my mother's own words, was the real story. We've decided Mara doesn't need her share right now. We will handle the funds until she's more stable and financially mature. More stable. Financially mature. Words dipped in arrogance. Another message from my father. Please expedite the transfer. We want the funds cleared for the holiday travel package. Holiday. Holiday travel package. The one they were on right now. But the sentence that broke the last remaining thread holding my loyalty was from Brianna. Mara won't fight it. She never fights anything. My throat burned. I wasn't someone who cried easily, but that line, that assumption, that dismissal, hit like a blade turned slowly. Not painful, just precise. I scrolled further. An audio file caught my eye. Sent from my mother to my father. A forwarded voice note. My stomach tightened, but I pressed play. My mother's voice came through, slightly muffled, but unmistakably smug. If she asks why we didn't tell her, we'll say it was last minute. She'll accept it. She always does. Honestly, she's better off staying home. She'd only slow us down. Slow. Them. Down. I pressed pause. My breathing steadied, then evened, then cooled. Not rage. No, rage scatters. This was something different. A settling. They had taken the money meant for me. They had funded a luxury vacation with it. They had erased me from the family holiday, from the celebration, from the plans. They had done it knowing I'd wake up in an empty house and assume nothing was wrong. They had counted on my silence, built a strategy around it, designed a betrayal that relied on me staying small. As I sat with the tablet glowing in my lap, one simple, clean truth unfolded. They thought I wouldn't fight back. That was their mistake. I closed the email, shut the tablet, and stood up. My legs felt steady, my mind clear. Everything they took from me, every dollar, every decision, every moment, they had done it in the shadows. But I don't live in the shadows anymore. And as the house hummed with quiet, I whispered a single sentence to myself, not in anger, but in certainty. This is the last time they underestimate me.
Discovery doesn't arrive in one moment. It arrives in layers. After finding the emails and that voice note, I didn't react the way people expected. I didn't slam doors or crumble on the couch or call anyone screaming. Instead, I sat there in the half-dark living room, the tablet warm against my palms, and let the truth settle. Not wash over me. Settle, like dust after an earthquake. I had spent years believing that if I kept my head down, If I didn't make trouble, if I stayed useful and gentle, my family would eventually see me. But that morning, staring at the faint reflection of myself in the black tablet screen, I realized something I should have known long ago. Some people don't overlook you by accident. They overlook you because it benefits them. That realization was the first layer. The second came as I walked slowly through the house, noticing details I had missed earlier in my shock. The trash had been taken out. The laundry basket was empty. My mother's favorite travel pillow, the burgundy one she never lent anyone, was gone from the guest room closet. On the counter sat a printed packing checklist with items crossed off in Brianna's dramatic handwriting. Every part of their departure was planned, every task assigned, every suitcase accounted for, except mine. I opened Brianna's room, not out of invasion, but clarity. She'd left her vanity lights on, maybe in the rush to get out before I woke. On her desk sat a folder labeled Holiday Coordination, a color-coded itinerary printed on glossy paper. I flipped through it slowly, each page turning like a verdict. There were dinner reservations, scuba excursions, spa treatments, even a yacht day scheduled, courtesy of Holiday Package. My mother even highlighted complimentary champagne on arrival. Then there it was. 4-person exclusive upgrades applied. 4-person. Not family upgrade, not party upgrade. 4. Specific, intentional. As I closed the folder, another detail surfaced. Small, almost insignificant, but devastating in its clarity. A tiny sticky note in Brianna's handwriting. Make sure to leave before 5:30. Mara wakes around 6. They had planned their escape around my sleeping schedule. I stood still, letting that one sink in deeper than the others, not because it hurt more, but because it confirmed something essential. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't an oversight. This was a strategy. The third layer of discovery came when I walked into my parents' room. My father's desk drawer was slightly ajar, unusual for him. Inside were documents, printed emails, bank statements. Among them was a folder from the estate attorney. For a moment, my hand hesitated over it. There's a quiet fear that comes before reading something you know will change everything you believe. But I picked it up. I opened it. The first page was the original distribution form, my grandmother's intended split, 1/3, each to Brianna, Evan, and Mara. Right beneath it sat a second form filed 2 weeks later, labeled Temporary Family Holding Agreement. My name was listed under a new column, Funds to be held by guardian party, Linda and Greg Collins. Under Reason for Temporary Hold was a sentence so condescending it read like a slap. Financial maturity. Me, the person who budgeted every paycheck, who saved quietly, who built her own life without complaint. Then I found the email that connected everything together, the one that made the betrayal not just personal, but calculated. It said, proceed with the full transfer to Greg and Linda. All 3 siblings have acknowledged distribution plan verbally. Verbal acknowledgement. A lie. A fabricated consent wrapped in administrative language. My mother had emailed back. Thank you. We want the funds available before the holidays. This will be our family's first real vacation in years. My breath caught, not from shock. Shock was long gone, but from the cold awareness that every person in my family had agreed to rewrite reality in a way that erased me. That was the 4th layer. The 5th layer came when I remembered something, an odd detail from weeks earlier. My grandmother's old friend, Mr. Harris, had asked me if I'd received what Helen left for you.
At the time, I'd assumed it would come later. His face tightened, but he didn't press. Now, standing there in my parents' room, the memory resurfaced with new meaning. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my recent calls until I found his number. My thumb hovered for a moment, then tapped. He picked up on the second ring. "Mara, everything all right?" His voice was warm, concerned, real. And for the first time that morning, I felt something close to relief. "I need to ask you something," I said quietly. "Did my grandmother ever mention anything about her inheritance, specifically what she wanted for me?" There was a pause, soft, steady, telling. Then he exhaled. "She did." I didn't speak. I waited. "She told me you were the one she trusted most. She said the money was to help you build a life outside of stress. She hoped it would let you finally breathe." I closed my eyes. It wasn't the money. It was what it represented. Freedom, recognition, intent. "She didn't want your parents involved. She said that directly." The sixth and final layer of discovery settled into me then. Not explosive, not dramatic, but quiet and irrevocable. My family didn't just take my money. They violated my grandmother's trust. They erased her wishes. They rewrote the truth to benefit themselves. And they counted on me never asking questions. But I was asking questions now. The right ones. The ones that opened doors they meant to keep permanently shut. When I hung up, I felt the last pieces of denial crumble. Not painfully, but peacefully, like a wall falling after years of pressure. As I stood there in the dim bedroom, one truth became clear crystal. Discovery isn't the moment you learn what happened. It's the moment you finally understand who people really are. And now that I knew, I also knew what I had to do next.
I spent the first night after the discovery sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall as if it might suddenly explain everything. Grief had moved through me like a slow, acidic tide, but by morning, something colder had settled in its place. Clarity. Not rage. Not chaos. Just a stillness so precise it felt like a blade resting flat against my palm. I realized that if I wanted justice, I couldn't move emotionally. I had to move intelligently. The first thing I did was gather everything. Every document, every text, every email, every financial inconsistency I had overlooked while trusting him. I didn't read them with pain anymore. I read them like a detective sorting evidence for a case that needed to be airtight. I opened a folder on my laptop and labeled it with the one word that felt honest: truth. As I organized everything chronologically, a pattern emerged. Proof that the betrayal hadn't been an impulsive slip, but a well-practiced routine repeated behind my back for months, maybe longer. What surprised me most wasn't what I found, but how calm I was while finding it. It was as if my heart had stepped aside to let my mind do the work. Every story of revenge I'd heard growing up was loud, shouting, breaking, storming out. But what I was experiencing felt different. My revenge would not be a storm. It would be a quiet, calculated correction, a return to balance. The next step was research. I dove into everything: professional consultations, legal advice videos, anonymous forums where people shared how they rebuilt their lives after betrayal. I learned things I never thought I'd need to know: how to protect my personal data, how to track digital footprints, how to secure my finances without raising suspicion. Each piece of information felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. But the plan wasn't just practical, it had to be psychological, too. He had taken advantage of my silence, my tendency to avoid conflict because I believed goodness protected itself. Now I understood silence differently. Silence isn't what lets people walk over you, it's what gives you room to observe their footprints. I began rehearsing calmness the way actors rehearse lines. I practiced my posture, my tone, my expressions. My goal wasn't deception, it was emotional discipline. I wanted him to believe nothing had changed, just long enough for me to position every piece of the plan exactly where it needed to be. And I also confided in one person, my closest friend, Mira. She was the kind of person whose presence steadied you. When I told her everything, she didn't gasp or rage on my behalf. She just listened, then placed a hand over mine. "What do you want?" she asked. Not revenge, not forgiveness, not even closure. "I want the truth to land exactly where it belongs," I said. "Then let's build that," she replied. With her help, I mapped out the timeline of his lies, matching it against the evidence I gathered. She pointed out gaps I hadn't noticed, told me where my emotions were filling in blanks instead of facts. It helped to have someone outside the pain help shape the plan inside it. The more we worked, the more I understood. This wasn't a plan to hurt him. This was a plan to free myself, emotionally, financially, psychologically. Revenge was only the byproduct of truth speaking loud enough to be undeniable. I took small steps every day. I changed passwords, I moved important documents, I opened a separate bank account. I contacted the right people quietly, gathering support without revealing my motive. I became intentional about every interaction with him, making mental notes of anything he said that might matter later. Sometimes he stood right in front of me while I carried knowledge he assumed I didn't have. But I wasn't performing. I wasn't pretending to love him. I was simply holding space for the truth to ripen on its own timeline. The key to my plan was timing, not too slow. That doubt weakened me, not too fast, that emotion rushed me. I wanted everything to align on a day when the evidence, the people involved, the emotional distance, and my own internal strength all intersected perfectly. And so I waited. But waiting wasn't passive. During those days, I rebuilt myself in ways he would never see coming. I took walks at sunrise, letting the cool air remind me who I was before him. I journaled until my handwriting steadied. I cooked meals that made the house smell like warmth instead of fear. I played soft music and let the notes reintroduce peace into spaces he unknowingly darkened. This was the quiet part of revenge, the internal restoration. Because what good is exposing someone if you crumble right after? One evening, while reviewing the final structure of my plan, I realized I no longer felt the sting of what he had done. I felt prepared, strong, rooted, and oddly enough, grateful. Betrayal had pushed me into a version of myself that was sharper, more aware, more whole. I closed my laptop and whispered to myself, "You're ready." The plan was complete. Controlled, strategic, and grounded, not in spite, but in self-respect. And soon, he would see that the silence he mistook for weakness was the very thing that would unmake every lie he built. If you're drawn to stories where calm turns to power, stay with us. Subscribe to Revenge Bible for more tales of justice served quietly. The day I chose for the confrontation didn't feel dramatic. There was no thunder, no strange coincidence, no cinematic cue that hinted something seismic was coming. It was an ordinary morning. Sunlight through the blinds, coffee warming my hands, the quiet hum of the refrigerator. But inside me, there was a steadiness that felt almost sacred. The kind of calm you only feel when you know the truth is finally about to breathe on its own. I didn't wake up seeking destruction. I woke up seeking alignment. By then, every layer of the plan was ready. I knew which documents needed to be revealed and in what order. I knew who needed to be present, who needed to be copied on the emails, who needed to hear my voice directly. Every step was intentional. Not harsh, not vindictive, just precise. He walked into the kitchen while I sat at the table reviewing the last details. His smile was casual, maybe even content. It struck me how different my world was from the one he thought we were still standing in. He kissed my cheek, poured himself coffee, and asked what my plans were for the day. I said, "Clarity," simply. He didn't know what that meant. Not yet. I waited until the afternoon. I wanted the house quiet, with no distractions or excuses. I asked him to sit with me in the living room, the place where so many small lies had blended into everyday life. He sat down across from me, his expression open, unsuspecting. I took a breath, not to calm myself, but to honor the moment. I had worked hard for this clarity. It deserved a clear voice. I said, "There's something you need to see." I placed the folder, Truth, between us. His eyes flickered, confusion tightening around them like a tightening string. When he opened it, I watched the shift happen. Shock is not loud. It's quiet, like a candle flickering in a room with no breeze. His fingers trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages, the messages, the bank statements, the timestamps, the photos. He didn't speak at first, neither did I. Silence can be generous when the truth needs room. Finally, his mouth opened, but no sound came out. He tried again. Where did you get all this?" I said, "It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's real." He tried reaching for the oldest script in the book, denial. But the evidence was layered too precisely. When denial cracked, he tried confusion, then apology, then panic. Each emotion washed over him like a wave hitting a wall because I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't engage with the chaos he expected. I said, "I trusted you, and you built an entire second life beside mine. I won't shout. I won't fight you. I'm simply realigning the truth with its rightful owner." He asked what I wanted. He asked if there was a way back. He asked if I was ending everything. I didn't answer those questions directly. Instead, I stood, picked up my phone, and pressed the button I had prepared for. Within seconds, the emails were sent. Copies of the evidence delivered to the necessary parties, depending on his betrayal. The colleagues he had deceived, the people he had financially endangered, the commitments he had violated. Every recipient was relevant. No gossip, no unnecessary exposure, just the truth distributed exactly where it mattered. He realized what I had done. The color drained from his face. "You're going to ruin me," he whispered. "No, you already did that to yourself. I'm just ending the silence that protected you." He reached for me, his voice cracking into a desperate apology that might have broken me months ago. But peace had already rooted in me. There was no part of me looking for his pain. I was looking for my freedom. I handed him a final envelope, documents outlining next steps, boundaries, and formal separation processes I had already initiated. Everything was clear, fair, and legally grounded. Not revenge disguised as justice, but justice delivered without bitterness. He sank into the couch, head in his hands shaking. For a moment, I saw him not as the man who hurt me, but as the man who could no longer escape the consequences he authored. And strangely, I didn't feel victorious. I felt whole. The confrontation continued in quiet waves. He asked questions. I answered only the essential ones. I didn't offer comfort. I didn't offer cruelty, just honesty. Eventually, when the air had thinned between us, I stood. I said, "This is the last conversation we'll ever have like this. From here on, everything moves through the truth, not through the version of love you tried to sell me." He looked up at me, eyes hollowed by the realization of what he had lost: trust, partnership, the future he assumed was guaranteed. But I wasn't there to witness his downfall. I was there to reclaim myself. I walked toward the door, grabbed my keys, and paused just long enough to give the moment a clean ending. I said, "You broke us quietly. I'm restoring myself quietly." When I left the house, the world felt strangely bright. Not triumphant, just aligned, balanced, true. My revenge wasn't the confrontation itself. It was the calmness I carried out the door. It was the way the truth stood tall without me holding it. It was the peace that settled into my chest like a long-awaited exhale. And it was the realization that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and the world still hears it. The morning after the confrontation, I woke to a kind of quiet I hadn't felt in a long time. Not the silence of abandonment, not that hollow, sinking kind of stillness, but the kind that feels like a doorway, a beginning. My breathing felt different. My thoughts moved without stumbling over old wounds. That's when I realized the revenge wasn't in watching him fall. It was in watching myself rise. In the days that followed, I didn't track his reactions or the fallout I knew would ripple through his world. I didn't need to. Justice had already begun its work, carried by truth, not by my hands. My energy went somewhere else entirely, to rebuilding the parts of me I had set aside to make him comfortable. I made space for my own life again, my own voice, my own direction. And that's something I want to say directly to anyone listening. Betrayal is not the end of your story. It's not the final chapter unless you let it be. People can hurt you, abandon you, lie to you, undermine you, but they don't get to decide their ending. They don't get to write the last page of your life. Only you do. You are allowed to come back from anything. You are allowed to rewrite everything. The world will tell you to move on quietly, to forgive instantly, to pretend the pain didn't shape you, but you don't owe anyone that kind of erasure. What you owe yourself is truth. And truth has a way of cleansing a path forward that's stronger and clearer than anything you left behind. Revenge, real revenge, isn't cruelty. It isn't chaos. It isn't destruction. Revenge is reclamation. It's choosing yourself so completely that the person who broke you no longer recognizes the power you've become. Revenge is standing in your truth without shaking. Revenge is peace you earned through courage. Revenge is saying, "You don't get to define me," and then proving it simply by living differently. For me, that power changed everything. I didn't walk away bitter. I walked away awakened. I learned that strength doesn't always show up as anger. Sometimes it shows up as the calm voice inside you that says, "I'm done shrinking." And when you follow that voice, your world
expands in ways you never imagined possible. If you've ever been left behind, underestimated, discarded, or betrayed, hear me. Your comeback can be louder than your pain. You can transform the very thing that was meant to break you into the reason you stand taller. For me, my name is Mara Collins, and I didn't just survive what happened to me, I rebuilt myself from it. I learned to trust my own strength more than anyone else's approval. I learned that revenge, quiet revenge, is the kind that lasts. And I learned that the end of their story for me was the beginning of my story for myself. And that's the part I hope you carry with you. Not the betrayal, not the hurt, but the truth you can rise, rebuild, and rewrite everything. Because I did, and so will you.